My name is Emily Dawson. I'm 60 years old. And lately, I've been thinking about how many times I felt a quiet doubt rise up inside me, and how often I told it to be quiet. I'm not telling this because I need forgiveness, applause, or someone to tell me I did my best. I'm telling it because I don't have as much time left as I once assumed, and some truths don't care whether you're ready for them or not. I wake up earlier now. Not because I want to, but because sleep doesn't hold me the way it used to. The house is quiet in the mornings. Too quiet. I make coffee out of habit, even though I can't drink much of it anymore. My hands shake a little when I pour. There's a mirror by the sink. I don't avoid it, but I don't linger either. The face looking back at me feels familiar and strange at the same time. Like someone I've known my whole life but never really listened to. I spend more time sitting than I used to. Sitting and remembering. Not the big moments people talk about. Not weddings or promotions or holidays. It's the small pauses that come back to me. The moments when I felt something was off, but I kept going anyway. I didn't ruin my life. I didn't make reckless choices. I wasn't careless or cruel. That's what makes this harder to explain. Most of my decisions made sense at the time. In my 20s, I was careful. That's the word I would have used. Careful with money. Careful with people. Careful with expectations. I had just finished school and took a job I didn't love but didn't hate either. It paid steadily. It had benefits. My parents were relieved. I remember my mother saying, "At least it's stable." And I nodded, because stability felt like safety, and safety felt like the responsible thing to want. There were moments back then when I felt a pull in a different direction. Nothing dramatic. Just a thought. A curiosity. A question that would come up late at night when I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fan. Is this it? I would feel it in my chest, like a small tightening. Not panic. Just discomfort. And I would tell myself I was being ungrateful. Lots of people would be happy to have what I had. So I learned how to quiet that voice. I got good at it. I told myself doubts were a sign of immaturity. That wanting more meant I didn't appreciate enough. I stayed late at work. I said yes when people asked for extra help. I filled my days so completely that there wasn't much room left for questions. In my 30s, life filled up even more. Marriage. A mortgage. Longer hours. I became someone others relied on. That felt important. Necessary. My husband was a good man. Practical. Kind in a steady way. Not very curious about feelings, but not dismissive either. We worked well on paper. There were conversations I almost started with him. Late night ones, when the dishes were done, and the TV was off. I would open my mouth, feel that old familiar doubt rising, and then close it again. What would I even say? That sometimes I felt like I was watching my own life instead of living it. That I couldn't name what I wanted, only what felt missing. It sounded selfish even in my head. So I swallowed it. We talked about logistics instead. Schedules. Repairs. Plans for next year. Next decade. Always assuming there would be plenty of time to sort out the rest later. I told myself that everyone feels this way sometimes. That this was just adulthood. The years passed quietly. Too quiet to notice while they were happening. In my 40s, my parents started aging in visible ways. My father moved more slowly. My mother repeated stories. I visited when I could. Called when I remembered. There were afternoons when I sat in my car outside their house, engine off, hand on the door handle, feeling a strange resistance. Not because I didn't love them. Because I didn't know how to be present without rushing. There was always something waiting for me back home. Work emails. Chores. A life that felt like it required constant tending. So I stayed shorter than I meant to. I listened with half my attention. I nodded while thinking about what I needed to do next. I told myself I'd make it up later. That phrase followed me everywhere. Later. Soon. One day. My mother died suddenly. Not dramatic. Not drawn out. Just a phone call on a Tuesday morning. I remember standing in my kitchen, the sound of her doctor's voice echoing oddly in the room, like it didn't belong there. At the funeral, people told me how proud she was of me. How much she talked about my work ethic. How reliable I was. I smiled and thanked them. I don't remember crying much that day. Mostly, I felt numb. It wasn't until months later, standing in the grocery store, reaching for the brand of tea she used to buy, that it hit me. I had known her. But I hadn't known her deeply. Not in the way I could have, if I'd slowed down and listened without distraction. That realization didn't change my life. That's the part people don't like to hear. I went back to work. I kept my routines. I told myself grief had its own timeline and that I was handling it fine. The doubts came back, a little louder now. More persistent. But I had decades of practice ignoring them. In my 50s, things started to thin out. Friendships faded without any clear ending. Just fewer calls. Longer gaps between messages. People moved. Got busy. Got tired. I noticed that when something good or bad happened, there were fewer people I felt comfortable telling. Not because they wouldn't care. Because it felt like too much effort to explain myself. My marriage became quieter, too. Not unhappy. Just shallow. We shared space more than we shared thoughts. There were nights when he fell asleep on the couch, the TV casting flickering light across the room, and I would sit in the dark bedroom, listening to the house settle, wondering when exactly I had stopped speaking honestly. Not out loud. Just to myself. Then came the turning point. It wasn't a grand moment. No dramatic confrontation. No sudden epiphany. It was a diagnosis. Mine. Nothing immediately fatal, but serious enough to rearrange priorities whether I wanted it to or not. Serious enough that doctors started using careful language. Serious enough that the word limited came up more than once. I remember driving home after that appointment. Traffic was heavy. The radio was on, playing a song I didn't recognize. Everything looked exactly the same as it always had. And yet something had shifted. For the first time, I couldn't tell myself I had plenty of time. The future wasn't a vague promise anymore. It had edges. That night, I lay awake and listened to my husband breathe beside me. I felt that old doubt again. But now it was sharper. Clearer. This is your life, it said. This is what it has been. I tried to list things I would change. Big things. Small things. But every path I imagined required time I no longer had in abundance. That's when the regret settled in. Not like a wave. More like a weight. Slow and steady. I thought about all the times I felt uncertain and chose silence instead. All the moments where I sensed I was drifting away from myself and decided it wasn't urgent enough to address. I didn't fail. I delayed. And delay, I've learned, has consequences just as real as mistakes. Some things can't be revisited. Conversations that never happened can't suddenly be had. Relationships that were allowed to fade don't always come back when you reach out years later, full of clarity and remorse. My father is gone now, too. I never asked him about his childhood. Never asked him what he regretted. I assumed there would be time. There wasn't. What can't be fixed is the accumulation. The years of not listening to that quiet inner voice. The habit of choosing what looked sensible over what felt true. I can't go back and sit longer at my mother's kitchen table. I can't call my younger self and tell her to stop being so afraid of inconvenience. I can't recover the friendships that dissolved because I was always too busy, too tired, too focused on the next obligation. What I have now is awareness. And it's both a gift and a burden. Some mornings, I sit by the window and watch the light change. I notice things I used to rush past. The way dust moves in the air. The sound of birds I can't name. I talk more honestly now. But there are fewer people left to hear it. If you're listening to this, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I don't believe in instructions from strangers. I only know what I wish I had understood sooner. That doubt you feel doesn't always mean danger. Sometimes it means the truth is trying to surface. Silencing it doesn't make it disappear. It just teaches it to wait. And it can wait a very long time. You don't have to make dramatic changes. You don't have to burn anything down. But maybe don't ignore yourself quite so thoroughly. I thought being dependable was enough. I thought showing up physically counted as presence. I thought fulfillment would arrive once I checked enough boxes. It didn't. What remains now is quieter, slower, more honest than I've ever been. I don't know how much time I have left. None of us really do, but some of us feel the edges sooner than others. I'm learning to sit with what is. To speak when something matters, even if my voice shakes. To listen when others open their mouths, without planning my response. If this meant something to you, you don't need to say anything. Just maybe notice the next time you feel that small internal hesitation. That pause before you agree. That question before you dismiss it. I'm not afraid of dying anymore. I'm afraid of not having fully lived while I was here. The house is quiet again now. The coffee is cold. The mirror still waits by the sink. This is me, finally telling the truth. And I'll sit with it for as long as I'm able.